"You're not welcome at our Christmas table, Dad." Those 7 words shattered my world on a cold December evening, spoken by the son I'd sacrificed everything for in the very house my life savings had built. I'm Dennis Flores, and this is the story of how my own family's betrayal became my greatest liberation. If you've ever felt invisible in rooms you helped create or been told you weren't good enough by people you gave everything to, this story is for you. Stay with me until the end and comment your city below so I can see how far my story has traveled. The mahogany grandfather clock in Michael's foyer struck 7. As I stood there, my work boots still damp from the December slush, holding a bottle of 18-year-old scotch I'd been saving for a special occasion. I thought tonight would be that occasion, discussing Christmas plans with my son and his wife in the home I'd helped them buy. How wrong I was. "Dad, we need to talk," Michael said, and something in his voice made my stomach drop. It was the same tone he'd used when he was 16 and had to tell me he'd crashed the truck. But we weren't talking about a dented fender now. Isabella emerged from the kitchen, her designer heels clicking against the Italian marble I'd helped them choose at the warehouse back when they couldn't afford the installation. She didn't look at me, she never really did anymore. Instead, she busied herself with adjusting the fresh orchids on the entrance table. Those expensive flowers she replaced weekly while I still clipped coupons for groceries. "Let's sit in the living room," Michael suggested, but it wasn't really a suggestion. It was choreographed, rehearsed. I could tell by the way Isabella positioned herself on the cream leather sectional, the one I'd driven to 3 different stores to find, because she insisted on that exact shade of ivory. I lowered myself into the accent chair across from them, the scotch bottle heavy in my hands. Through the bay windows behind them I could see the landscaping lights, illuminating the garden I'd spent every weekend last summer installing. Each rose bush, each decorative stone, each carefully placed solar light, my handiwork, my sweat, my love made visible. "Isabella's parents are flying in for Christmas." Michael began, his eyes focused somewhere over my left shoulder, unable to meet my gaze. "And we've been talking about the arrangements." "That's wonderful," I said, though something cold was creeping up my spine. "I can help with the airport pickup." "What time does their flight—" "Dad," Michael interrupted, and finally his eyes met mine. In them I saw my son, but also a stranger. "We think it would be best if you celebrated Christmas elsewhere this year." The words hung in the air like frozen breath. I must have misheard. I must have misunderstood. This was my son, my Michael, the boy whose fever I'd stayed up monitoring when he was 3, whose baseball games I never missed, even when it meant losing overtime pay, whose college applications we'd filled out together at this very kitchen table. Well, not this table, but the old one in our old house, the one I'd sold to help with their down payment. "I don't understand," I said, though I was beginning to. The pieces were falling into place like dominoes. Isabella's increasingly cold greetings, the declined invitations to Sunday dinners, the unreturned calls. Isabella finally spoke, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when explaining things to service workers. "Dennis, you have to understand, my parents are very particular. They're used to a certain type of gathering, a certain caliber of conversation. Last Easter, when you told that story about your construction days—" "The one about the beam that almost fell?" I asked, confused. "Everyone was laughing." "They were being polite," she said, examining her manicured nails. "My father is a federal judge. My mother sits on 3 museum boards. They discuss art, literature, current affairs, not workplace accidents and union disputes." Each word was a carefully placed blade. I looked at Michael, waiting for him to defend me, to remind his wife that those workplace accidents had paid for his education, that those union disputes had ensured we had health insurance when he broke his arm at 7, at 9, at 13. My accident-prone boy, who I'd always rushed to the emergency room, no matter the hour. But Michael said nothing. He sat there, a 40-year-old man, in a $200 sweater I'd given him last Christmas, unable to stand up to his wife, unable to stand up for his father. "So, I'm an embarrassment," I said. It wasn't a question. "That's not—" Michael started, but Isabella cut him off with a look. "We're just trying to avoid awkwardness," she said. "You understand, don't you? It's just one dinner. We'll celebrate with you separately. Maybe the weekend after." The weekend after. Like I was an obligation to be scheduled, a chore to be completed. I stood up, still holding the scotch, and walked to the mantelpiece. Above it hung their wedding photo, Isabella radiant in a dress that cost more than my truck, Michael beaming beside her. I'd paid for half that wedding, taken out a loan I was still paying off because I wanted my son to have the perfect day. "Do you remember," I said, not turning around, "when you were 8 and you asked me why some kids' dads wore suits to work and I wore a hard hat?" Michael shifted uncomfortably behind me. "Dad, I told you that every job was important, that building things with your hands was just as honorable as building things with words or numbers. You said you wanted to be like me when you grew up." I turned to face them. When did I become something to be hidden? "You're being dramatic," Isabella said, and there was an edge of irritation now. "We're not hiding you. We're just acknowledging that people from different backgrounds don't always mix well. My parents appreciate a more refined atmosphere." "Refined?" I repeated, tasting the word like something bitter. "Is that what we're calling it?" I walked over to the built-in bookshelf, running my finger along the wood. "I installed these shelves," I said. "Spent 3 days making sure they were perfectly level, sanding them smooth so you wouldn't get splinters. That chandelier, I rewired the whole ceiling to support it because the electrical was from the 60s. The crown molding in your bedroom, hand-cut every corner, 45-degree angles, perfect to the millimeter." "Dad, we appreciate everything," Michael began. "Do you?" I asked. "Because from where I'm standing it seems like you appreciate the labor but not the laborer. You want the house but not the hands that built it." Isabella stood up, smoothing her skirt. "I think you're taking this too personally. We're not saying you're not welcome in our home, just not at this particular dinner. It's a matter of compatibility, Dennis. Surely you can understand that—" "Compatibility," I said. "Your parents and I are incompatible." "Well, yes," she said as if it were obvious. "You're a construction worker. They're academics and professionals. You drink beer, they drink wine. You watch football. They attend the symphony. It's not a judgment, it's just different worlds." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Different worlds. Your father-in-law, who you're so ashamed of, who isn't refined enough for your parents. Do you want to know what I did this week, Isabella?" She sighed, checking her phone. "Dennis, I worked 63 hours. I installed safety railings at the Children's Hospital, the new wing they're opening for pediatric cancer patients. I made sure those railings were so secure that no sick child, no matter how weak, could accidentally fall. I did it with these hands that aren't refined enough for your dinner table." "Nobody's saying your work isn't important," Michael interjected weakly. "No, you're just saying I'm not important enough to sit at the same table as your in-laws." I set the scotch bottle on their coffee table, another piece I'd helped them move in, nearly throwing out my back in the process. "Keep it. Consider it an early Christmas gift, since I won't be here to give it to you in person." "Dad, please don't be like this," Michael said, finally standing. "We can work something out. Maybe you could come for dessert." Dessert. I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this person? When had the boy who used to wait by the window for me to come home from work, who'd run to the door shouting, "Daddy's here," become a man who scheduled his father like an appointment, who offered him table scraps of time like dessert after the real guests had eaten? "I need to go," I said, heading for the door. "Dennis, you're overreacting," Isabella called after me. This is exactly the kind of behavior that makes these situations difficult. I stopped at the door, my hand on the knob. What situations? Isabella, family is family, a situation now. "You know what I mean," she said, exasperated. "The emotional outbursts, the guilt tripping. My parents would never—" "Your parents would never what?" I turned back. "Would never work 12-hour shifts to put food on the table, would never miss their own birthday dinner because overtime was available and tuition was due, would never sell their truck, their boat, their retirement savings to make sure their child had everything they needed." "Dad," Michael said quietly, "that's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. "Tell me, son, what's not fair? Me pointing out what I've done or you forgetting it?" The silence stretched between us, filled with everything we weren't saying. I could hear the hum of their refrigerator, the Sub-Zero they'd bought with the money I'd given them for their anniversary, telling them to get something nice for the house. "I should have known," I said finally. "When you stopped bringing your kids to my apartment. It's too small, Dad. The kids need room to run around. When you started making excuses for why I couldn't come to their school events. It's during work hours, Dad, you'd have to take off." Always an excuse, always a reason why I didn't quite fit. "That's not we never meant," Michael stammered. "Do you remember—" I interrupted. "When you got into Columbia. You were waitlisted at first. I drove up there in my work clothes because I'd come straight from a job site, and I sat in the admissions office for 4 hours until someone would see me. I told them about you, how you studied at the kitchen table while I worked night shifts, how you tutored kids in the neighborhood for free, how you were the first in our family to go to college." The woman, she looked at me, at my dirty boots, my calloused hands, and I thought she'd dismiss me. But she listened. She really listened. 2 weeks later, you got your acceptance letter." Michael's face had gone pale. "You never told me that." "I never told you a lot of things," I said. "Like how I spent my lunch breaks doing side jobs to pay for your SAT prep courses. Or how I turned down a foreman position because it would have meant relocating and I didn't want to uproot you during high school. I never told you because that's what fathers do. We sacrifice, we provide, we stay quiet about the cost." "Dennis, we're grateful, truly," Isabella said, but her tone suggested she was managing me handling a difficult situation. But gratitude doesn't mean we have to force relationships that don't naturally work. "Relationships that don't naturally work," I repeated. "Like a father and son." "That's not what she meant," Michael said quickly. "Then what did she mean?" I asked. "Explain it to me, Michael. Use small words since I'm just a construction worker. Explain how I became someone you're ashamed of." "I'm not ashamed." "You are," I said, and the certainty of it hit me like a physical blow. "You're ashamed of where you came from. You're ashamed that your father works with his hands, that I don't have a degree, that I say yeah instead of yes, and sometimes forget which fork to use first. You're ashamed that I don't fit into this life you've built, this careful construction where everything matches and nothing is out of place." I looked around the room one more time at the walls I'd helped paint, the floors I'd helped refinish, the life I'd helped build, but was no longer welcome to be part of. "But here's the thing, son," I continued. "This house, this life, this carefully curated existence, it's built on a foundation I poured. Every beam, every nail, every sacrifice. And now you want to live in it without acknowledging the builder. You're twisting everything, Isabella said, her patience finally snapping. We're asking for one dinner, one evening. It's not an exile. It's a simple request to make everyone comfortable. Everyone except me, I said. You're choosing to be offended, she shot back. This victim mentality is exactly why. Isabella, Michael warned, but she was already going. No, Michael, he needs to hear this. Your father shows up here uninvited, expecting to be included in everything without considering whether he fits. My parents have worked hard to achieve their position in society. They've earned the right to associate with people on their level. It's not snobbery, it's preference. And frankly, Dennis, your inability to understand that your insistence on making everything about your sacrifices, your work, your struggles, it's exhausting. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I could feel my hands clenching and unclenching. The same hands that had held Michael as a baby taught him to throw a baseball applauded at every graduation. You're right, I said quietly, and both of them looked surprised. I don't fit. I don't fit in a world where love is conditional on social status. I don't fit where family is ranked by income brackets. I don't fit where a father becomes an embarrassment because he built houses instead of hedge funds. I opened the door, letting in the cold December air. But Isabella, Michael, the house you live in, the car, you drive, the college degrees on your wall, the wedding rings on your fingers, they all exist because I didn't fit. Because I worked jobs that people like your parents looked down on. Because I got dirty so you could stay clean. Dad, wait, Michael called, but I was already stepping outside. Enjoy your Christmas dinner, I said. I'm sure it will be very refined, very compatible, very comfortable for everyone who matters. The last thing I saw before the door closed was Michael's face torn between the man he'd become and the boy he'd been, between the wife he'd chosen and the father he was losing. But he didn't follow me. He didn't fight for me. He stayed in his warm, perfect house, in his carefully ordered life, and let me walk into the cold. I sat in my truck for a long moment looking at the house. Every window glowed with warm light, making it look like something from a Christmas card. The house I'd helped build, filled with a family I was no longer good enough for. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and memories. Every corner of this town held something: the park, where I'd taught Michael to ride a bike; the baseball field, where I'd coached his little league team; the community college, where I'd taken night classes to try to better myself, though I'd had to drop out when Michael needed braces. My apartment felt smaller than usual when I got home. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that was really just a corner of the living room. But it was mine, paid for, with work that apparently wasn't refined enough, with hands that weren't clean enough, with a life that wasn't good enough. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos. Michael at 5, missing his front teeth, holding a hammer that was too big for him, helping me build a deck. Michael at 10, both of us covered in paint after we'd redone his bedroom. Michael at 16, standing next to the car I'd bought him used, but reliable. Michael at 22, college graduation, my arm around him, both of us grinning like we'd conquered the world. When had it changed? When had I become someone to hide rather than someone to be proud of? The scotch I'd brought home, the cheaper bottle, not the 18-year-old I'd left at Michael's, burned going down, but it was a familiar burn, an honest one, not refined, not sophisticated, just real. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Dad, you left your gloves here. My work gloves, the ones I'd pulled off hastily when I'd knocked on their door, not wanting to track in any dirt. Even in my hurt, I'd been careful not to soil their perfect home. Keep them, I texted back. Maybe they'll come in handy if you ever need to do any real work. It was petty, I knew, but I was tired of being the bigger person, tired of understanding, tired of accepting less than I deserved. Another text this time from Isabella. Dennis, I've arranged for a car service to pick up my parents from the airport. Thank you for offering, but it won't be necessary. She'd arranged it, as if I'd offered, as if picking up her parents was a favor I'd volunteered for rather than a son's duty I'd been denied. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The next morning came too early, but work didn't wait for family drama. I arrived at the job site, a new elementary school, before dawn, the way I always did. The other guys noticed something was off. "You okay, Dennis?" asked Tom, who'd worked with me for 15 years. "You look like someone died." "Just family stuff," I said, strapping on my tool belt. "Kids?" he asked knowingly. Tom had 3 of his own, all grown, all with their own complications. "My son doesn't want me at Christmas dinner." I said the words sounding even worse out loud. "His in-laws are too good for me, apparently." Tom whistled low. "That's rough, brother. What are you going to do?" "Work," I said. "Same as always." And I did. I threw myself into the job with a focus that bordered on obsession. Every measurement perfect, every cut precise, every joint seamless. If I wasn't good enough for their dinner table, I'd be excellent at this. This was something I could control, something where my worth was measured in work, completed not wine selections and conversation topics. But throughout the day my phone stayed silent. No apology from Michael, no attempt to make things right. The silence was deafening. That evening I stopped by my sister Rosa's house. She took one look at me and knew something was wrong. "What did Michael do?" she asked, not even pretending it could be anything else. I told her everything, sitting at her kitchen table. A table that had seen 30 years of family dinners where no one had ever been turned away for not being refined enough. Rosa's face darkened with each word. "That little. After everything you've done for him." "Don't," I said. "Don't badmouth him. He's still my son." "He's a fool," she said firmly. "And that wife of his?" She switched to Spanish, unleashing a stream of words that didn't need translation. "It is what it is," I said, though the resignation in my voice didn't match the hurt in my chest. "No," Rosa said firmly. "It is not what it is. You don't accept this, Dennis. You've accepted too much already. The missed birthdays, the excuses, the way they use you when they need something and forget you when they don't." "He's my son," I repeated, as if that explained everything, excused everything. "And you're his father," she countered. "She. Doesn't that mean something? Doesn't that deserve respect?" I didn't have an answer. I'd spent so many years believing that love meant sacrifice, that being a father meant giving everything and expecting nothing. But sitting in Rosa's warm kitchen, surrounded by photos of her children and grandchildren who visited every week, who called just to chat, who would never dream of excluding her from anything, I wondered if I'd gotten it wrong. "Come here for Christmas," Rosa said. "We'd love to have you." "Maybe," I said, though we both knew I wouldn't. I'd probably spend it alone, the way I'd spent too many holidays waiting for Michael to find time for me in his busy, important, refined life. The week crawled by, work, home, sleep, repeat. No word from Michael. Though I saw Isabella's social media posts about Christmas preparations, the organic turkey she'd ordered, the wine pairings she'd selected, the place cards she'd hand calligraphed. Everything perfect. Everything just so. On Thursday, my phone rang. Michael. "Hi, Dad." Michael. "I wanted to. Can we talk?" "We're talking." "In person. Can I come by?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect what was left of my dignity, but he was my son. "I'll be home after 6. He showed up at 6:15, looking uncomfortable in my small apartment, as if he'd forgotten how to exist in spaces that weren't professionally decorated. "Beer," I offered. "Sure." We sat in silence for a moment, the space between us filled with everything we weren't saying. "Isabella thinks I should apologize," he said finally. "And what do you think I think?" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think things got out of hand. You took it the wrong way." "I took it the wrong way," I repeated. "Your wife tells me I'm not refined enough for her parents. You tell me I'm not welcome at Christmas dinner, and I took it the wrong way. It's not about you not being good enough." "Stop," I said. "Stop lying to both of us. It's exactly about that. Your wife thinks I'm beneath her, and you're letting her. She doesn't think—" "Michael," I interrupted, "your wife has looked down on me from the day we met. She's made comments about my apartment, my truck, my clothes, my job, and you've never not once defended me. That's not true. Name one time," I challenged. "One time you stood up for me." He was quiet, and in that silence was my answer. "I've given you everything." I said the words coming out raw, unfiltered. Everything I had, everything I could borrow, everything I could earn. And somehow, it's never been enough. I'm never enough. Dad, do you know what I wanted for Christmas? I asked. Not presents, not money, not things. I wanted to sit at a table with my family. I wanted to watch my grandchildren open presents. I wanted to feel for just one day like I belonged in your life, instead of orbiting around its edges, allowed in only when convenient. Michael's face was a study in conflict. "It's just one dinner, Dad. Isabella's parents are difficult. They have expectations, and I don't meet them. It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple," I said. "Either you're ashamed of me or you're not. Either I'm family or I'm not. Either I'm welcome or I'm not. There's no middle ground here, Michael. You're being unfair. I'm being unfair." I stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, people were walking by, living their lives, carrying their own burdens. "I sold my house to help with your down payment. I cashed out my 401k when Isabella wanted that dream wedding. I work overtime every week to help with your kids' private school tuition. And I'm being unfair because I expect to be included in Christmas dinner." "We didn't ask you to do those things," Michael said quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. I turned to look at him, this stranger wearing my son's face. "You didn't ask," I repeated. "No, you didn't ask. You just mentioned needs, problems, wishes, and I solve them, because that's what I do. That's what I've always done." "But you're right, you didn't ask. You just accepted and accepted and accepted until taking became so normal you forgot it was giving on the other end." "That's not we're grateful. Are you?" I asked. "Because gratitude looks different from where I'm standing. Gratitude doesn't exclude. Gratitude doesn't hide. Gratitude doesn't rank people by their professions and find them wanting." Michael stood up, setting his untouched beer on the coffee table, a table I'd built myself back when I had dreams of teaching him woodworking before he decided he was too good for manual labor. "I should go," he said. "Isabella's making dinner." "Of course she is," I said. "Something refined, I'm sure, something compatible with your lifestyle." He paused at the door. "Dad, I do love you." "I know," I said. "You love me like you love that old recliner in your garage. Sentimental value, but too embarrassing to have in the living room." He left without another word. And I stood there in my small apartment, surrounded by the life I'd built, modest but honest, simple but mine. The walls were covered with photos of Michael through the years, certificates from trade school, a few drawings my grandchildren had made before Isabella decided my refrigerator wasn't the appropriate place to display their art. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at a number I hadn't called in years. James, my old foreman, who'd moved to Arizona after retirement. "Dennis," he answered on the third ring. "Is that really you?" "Hey, Jim, how's the desert treating you? We talked for an hour about work, about retirement, about kids who forgot where they came from." Jim's daughter was a lawyer now, he said, but she still brought the grandkids by every Sunday, still called him for advice, still introduced him proudly as "my dad who built half of Phoenix." "The secret," Jim said, "is knowing your worth doesn't come from them. It comes from here." And even though I couldn't see him, I knew he was pointing at his chest. "The work we do, the lives we've lived, the things we've built that has value, Dennis, whether they see it or not." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a while, not bothering to turn on the lights. The Christmas lights from the apartment across the way blinked cheerfully, reminding me of the season I was about to spend alone. But alone wasn't the worst thing, I realized. The worst thing was being surrounded by people who made you feel alone, who looked through you instead of at you, who valued what you could give, but not who you were. My phone buzzed. A text from Rosa. "Dinner's at 2 on Christmas. You better be here." Then another from her daughter, Maria. "Uncle Dennis' mom told me what happened. Michael's an idiot. We love you." And another from Rosa's husband, Carlos. "You're family to us, hermano. Always have been." I sat there, phone in hand, feeling something shift inside me. Maybe I'd been looking for belonging in the wrong place. Maybe family wasn't just about blood. It was about who showed up, who saw you, who wanted you at their table, not despite who you were, but because of it. The next morning at work, I made a decision. I called my credit union and stopped the automatic transfer that had been sending money to Michael's account every month, the one I'd set up to help with their mortgage, telling myself it was just temporary, just until they got on their feet. 3 years of temporary had been enough. Then I called the private school and canceled the credit card authorization for the grandchildren's tuition. If I wasn't good enough for Christmas dinner, my money wasn't good enough for their education. It wasn't about revenge, it was about respect. It was about finally understanding that love without respect wasn't love at all. It was use. That afternoon, Michael called 6 times. I didn't answer. Isabella sent a text. "Dennis, the school called about some confusion with the payment. Can you please sort this out?" I texted back, "No confusion, I've sorted it out. Good luck with everything." The calls increased. Voicemails piled up. I deleted them without listening. I'd heard enough words. Now it was time for consequences. On Saturday, 2 days before Christmas, Michael showed up at the job site. I was 40 feet up securing beams when I saw him below, in his expensive coat and leather shoes, looking as out of place as I apparently was in his dining room. "Dad," he called up, "we need to talk. I'm working." I called back, "Something you wouldn't understand. This is serious. You canceled the tuition payment?" "Yes, I did." "You can't just—" "I can, and I did," I said, climbing down carefully. Safety first, even when your world was falling apart. If I'm not family enough for Christmas, I'm not an ATM for the rest of the year. "You're punishing the children," he said when I reached the ground. "No," I said, pulling off my hard hat. "I'm refusing to enable their parents. There's a difference." "Dad, be reasonable." "Reasonable? I laughed. Was it reasonable to tell me I'm not welcome at Christmas? Was it reasonable to let your wife treat me like hired help? Was it reasonable to take hundreds of thousands of dollars from me while being ashamed of where it came from? We're not ashamed. Stop lying, I said firmly. At least have the courage to own your choices. You picked your side, Michael. You chose the people who looked down on me over the person who lifted you up. Now live with that choice. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, he said. Isabella's family, they have expectations, and I don't. I asked. I had one expectation, Michael. One, that my son would have my back, that when push came to shove, you'd remember who was there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every triumph and failure, but you couldn't even give me that. So you're cutting us off, your grandchildren. I'm cutting off the financial support, I corrected. If you want me in their lives, I'm here. But I'm done paying for the privilege of being excluded. I'm done financing a lifestyle that has no room for me in it. Michael's face was red from cold or anger, I couldn't tell. This is Isabella's fault, is that what you're saying? No, I said. It's your fault. Isabella showed you who she was from day one. You're the one who chose her over your family. You're the one who never defended me. You're the one who let it get to this point. I can't believe you're doing this, he said, right before Christmas. You did this, I said. I'm just finally responding to it. I turned to go back to work, but he grabbed my arm. Dad, please. The kid's school has payment plans, I said, removing his hand. Or there's public school, the one you went to. It seemed to work out fine for you, well, until you decided you were too good for where you came from. This isn't you, he said. You're not cruel. You're right, I agreed. I'm not cruel. Cruel is telling an old man who's given you everything that he's not refined enough for dinner. I'm just done. There's a difference. I watched him drive away in his BMW, kicking up dust from the construction site that settled on everything, like a reminder of the world he'd left behind. The other guys on the crew didn't say anything, but I could feel their eyes on me. They'd heard enough to understand. Tom finally broke the silence with a hand on my shoulder and words that cut straight through. You did the right thing, Dennis. Sometimes love means letting go of people who only know how to take. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every Christmas from the past decade. The pattern was so clear now, like looking at blueprints after the building's already fallen. First, it was subtle, arriving separately at family gatherings, leaving early because Isabella had other commitments. Then came the excuses about why I couldn't stay in their guest room anymore. The children need that space for play. Finally, the complete erasure, as if I'd been slowly photoshopped out of their perfect family portrait. The phone rang at midnight. Isabella. Dennis, we need to discuss this rationally. She said, her voice carrying that false calm that meant she was furious. You're destroying your relationship with your grandchildren over a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I said. You made it crystal clear where I stand. Below your parents, below your social circle, below your standards. You're being manipulative, she accused, using money to punish us for trying to maintain family harmony. Family harmony, I repeated, sitting up in the dark. Is that what you call it when you exclude family members? Must be nice to harmonize without the discordant note of a construction worker. My parents are important people, Dennis. They've worked their entire lives to achieve their status. They deserve to be comfortable. And I've worked my entire life, too, I shot back. 60, 70 hours a week since I was 17? But my work doesn't count because it made me dirty instead of distinguished. You're twisting my words. I'm repeating them. You're just hearing them clearly for the first time. She sighed dramatically. What will it take to resolve this? An apology, fine. I apologize if you felt excluded. If I felt excluded? I laughed, but it was hollow. Isabella, you literally told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner. There's no if about it. We offered alternatives. You could come for dessert, or we could celebrate separately. Stop, I interrupted. Just stop. You don't get it, and you never will. This isn't about scheduling. It's about respect. It's about the fact that you see me as something to be managed, handled, kept at a safe distance, so I don't contaminate your perfect world. You're being ridiculous. We've included you in plenty of things. Name one, I challenged. One event in the last year where you invited me without Michael having to ask first. One time you called just to talk. One moment where you treated me like actual family instead of an obligation. The silence stretched long enough that I thought she'd hung up. This vindictiveness isn't helping anyone, she finally said. The children are the ones who'll suffer. The children barely know me, I said, the truth of it burning my throat. You've made sure of that. Can't have them picking up my unrefined habits, right? Can't have them learning that their grandfather works with his hands. That's not. When did they last visit me, Isabella? When did you last bring them to my apartment? When did you last let them see where their father grew up, who their family really is? Your apartment isn't suitable for children. It was suitable enough for Michael, I said. He survived it, thrived even. Got into Columbia from that unsuitable apartment. Times have changed. No, you changed him. You took my son and turned him into someone who's ashamed of his own father. Michael makes his own choices, she said coldly. Does he? Because from where I sit, he doesn't choose anything anymore. He just follows your lead, terrified of disappointing you the way he's disappointed me. I don't have to listen to this, she snapped. We offered you a perfectly reasonable compromise, and you're throwing a tantrum like a child. A compromise, I said, feeling exhaustion seep into my bones. You think excluding me is a compromise. That tells me everything I need to know. The tuition is due January 1st, she said, changing tactics. The children will be removed from school. Then you'd better figure it out, I said. Maybe your important parents can help. I'm sure they have refined money that's much more acceptable than mine. You're going to regret this, Dennis. The only thing I regret, I said, is not seeing this sooner. Not recognizing that my money was welcome even when I wasn't. Good night, Isabella. I hung up and turned off my phone. Let them stew in the consequences of their choices. Sunday came gray and bitter, the kind of cold that settled in your bones. I went to Mass at St. Joseph's, the church where Michael had been baptized, where he'd made his first communion, where I'd prayed countless times for God to watch over my boy. Father Martinez noticed me sitting alone and stopped after the service. Dennis, good to see you. Will Michael and the family be joining us for Christmas Mass? Not this year, Father. I said, not trusting myself to say more. He studied my face with those knowing eyes that had seen too many family fractures. You know, Dennis, sometimes the hardest part of love is letting people experience the consequences of their choices. Even when it's your son. Especially then, he said gently. We can't force people to value us. We can only decide how much of ourselves we're willing to give to people who don't. I thought about those words as I drove to the cemetery where Linda was buried. My wife, taken too soon, who'd never gotten to see Michael graduate college, get married, have children. I stood at her grave, my breath clouding in the cold air. You wouldn't recognize him, Linda, I said to the headstone. Our boy, he's successful. Everything we dreamed for him. Big house, good job, beautiful family. But somewhere along the way, he forgot us. Forgot where he came from. Forgot that success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you bring with you. The wind whispered through the bare trees, and I imagined it was her voice telling me what she always used to say. You can't fix people, Dennis. You can only love them and hope they figure it out. I'm trying, I told her, grave. But it's hard to love someone who's ashamed of you. On my way home, I stopped at the hardware store. Chuck, the owner, was working despite it being Sunday. Dennis picking up supplies for a project, just browsing. I said, running my hands over the familiar tools, the wood stains, the boxes of screws and bolts. This was my world, honest, straightforward, where things either worked or they didn't, where a level was either true or it wasn't. Heard Michael's doing well, Chuck said conversationally. Saw the article about his company in the paper. Yeah, he's doing great. I said, not mentioning that I'd learned about his promotion from that same newspaper article, not from him. You must be proud. I am, I said. And it was true. I was proud of his success. I just wished he wasn't ashamed of mine. Monday arrived with fresh snow and a text from Rosa. Family meeting at my house, 6 p.m. Don't even think about not showing up. I knew better than to argue with my sister. When I arrived, her living room was full. Her children, their spouses, some of my cousins, even my brother Roberto, who'd driven in from Cleveland. What's this about? I asked. It's about you being an idiot, Rosa said bluntly. Sitting alone, feeling sorry for yourself when you have a family right here who wants you. I'm not feeling sorry. Shut up and listen, she interrupted. Michael called me, told me his version of events, made it sound like you were being unreasonable about some scheduling conflict. That's not... I know it's not, she said. Because then Isabella called demanding I talk sense into you about the tuition. And that woman Dennis, she showed her true colors, talking about how your money was good enough, but you weren't, how they had to manage your presence in their lives. Maria Rosa's daughter spoke up. She actually used the word embarrassing, Tio. She said your presence would be embarrassing for her parents. The room erupted in Spanish and English voices, overlapping in outrage. Roberto slammed his hand on the coffee table. That boy needs his ass kicked. After everything you've done, he's still my son, I said quietly. No, Rosa said firmly. A son doesn't do this. A son doesn't let his wife treat his father like hired help. A son doesn't take hundreds of thousands of dollars and then say the man who gave it isn't good enough to eat at his table. What do you want me to do? I asked. I already cut off the money. You come to Christmas with us, she said. You remember that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. You let us remind you that you're valued, respected, loved, not for your money, but for you. Carlos Rosa's husband raised his beer. To Dennis, he said, who built half this city with his hands and raised a son who forgot to be grateful for it. To Dennis. The room echoed, and I had to look away to hide the moisture in my eyes. After everyone left, Rosa and I sat in her kitchen sharing a bottle of wine that probably wasn't refined enough for Isabella's parents. You know what pisses me off most, Rosa said. You gave that boy everything. Everything. And he married a woman who made him choose between her world and his family. He made the choice, I said. I can't blame it all on Isabella. No, but she poisoned the well. Drop by drop, comment by comment, until he started seeing you through her eyes instead of his own. Maybe I wasn't a good enough father. Stop that right now, Rosa snapped. You were a wonderful father. You worked yourself to the bone for that boy. You showed up to every game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference. You taught him right from wrong, the value of hard work, the importance of family. It's not your fault he forgot those lessons. My phone buzzed. Another text from Michael. Dad, please, can we work this out? The kids are asking about you. I showed it to Rosa. She snorted. Now the kids are asking how convenient. Where was this concern when you were being excluded from Christmas? Should I respond? Are you going to cave on the money? No. Are you going to accept being treated as less than? No. Then what's there to work out? She was right, but it didn't make it easier. That night I composed and deleted a dozen responses before finally sending, "I love the kids. They're welcome in my life anytime, but I'm done financing a life I'm not welcome in." His response was immediate. "You're welcome." "We never said you weren't welcome," I typed back. "You said I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner, that I wasn't compatible with Isabella's parents, that I should come for dessert or celebrate separately. That's not welcome, Michael. That's managed. I'm done being managed." 3 dots appeared and disappeared repeatedly. He was typing and deleting just like I had. Finally, "This is Isabella's fault." "No," I responded. "It's your fault for not standing up to her. A man protects his family, Michael, all of his family. You forgot that." No response came, and I didn't expect one. The truth was harder to swallow than pride. Tuesday was Christmas Eve. I worked a half day helping finish the elementary school's gymnasium floor. There was something peaceful about the repetitive motion of laying boards, measuring, cutting, fitting. Each piece had its place, its purpose. Nothing was excluded for not being refined enough. Tom worked beside me in comfortable silence until finally he spoke. "My son married a woman like Isabella once, lasted 3 years before he came to his senses. What happened? She made him choose between her and everyone else in his life. Eventually he realized that someone who loves you doesn't make you choose. Michael's stronger-willed than that," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. "Is he?" Because from where I'm standing, he looks like a man who traded his backbone for a mortgage he can't afford and a lifestyle that owns him instead of the other way around. "When did kids start thinking they were better than their parents?" I asked. Tom laughed bitterly. "When they started mistaking education for wisdom and income for worth." We finished the floor as snow began falling heavily outside. It would be a white Christmas, the kind Michael used to love as a child. He'd wake me at dawn too excited to wait, and we'd sit by our small tree opening presents that were modest but chosen with love. Now he probably had a designer tree with coordinating ornaments and presents that cost more than I made in a month. But did he have happiness? Did he have peace? Did he have the family he'd pushed away? That evening I sat in my apartment watching the snow fall. The city looked clean and bright, all its rough edges softened. My phone rang an unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Flores." The voice was elderly cultured with the kind of accent that came from expensive education. "Yes. This is Judge Harrison, Isabella's father." I sat up straighter, though he couldn't see me. "Judge Harrison, I understand there's been some difficulty regarding Christmas arrangements. Is that what Isabella told you? She said you were upset about scheduling conflicts." I laughed short and sharp. "Is that what we're calling it? Your daughter told me I wasn't refined enough to eat at the same table as you, that my presence would make you uncomfortable. That's not a scheduling conflict, Judge. That's exclusion based on class prejudice." There was a pause. "I see. That's not quite how it was presented to us." "I'm sure it wasn't. Let me guess. She made me sound unreasonable, emotional difficult." "Something like that," he admitted. "Though I'm beginning to suspect we haven't heard the full story. The full story is that I've bankrolled your daughter's lifestyle for years while being told I'm not good enough to share a meal with her family. The full story is that my son chose his wife's snobbery over his father's love. The full story is that I'm done being treated like an ATM with no feelings. Mr. Flores, Dennis, I think there's been a serious miscommunication. My wife and I have no issue with you attending Christmas dinner. We were actually looking forward to meeting the man who raised Michael." "Were you?" I asked. "Were you really looking forward to meeting the construction worker? The man with calloused hands and a state school education, the grandfather your grandchildren are taught to be embarrassed by." "That's a harsh characterization. It's an accurate one. Ask your daughter how many times she's brought the children to my apartment. Ask her when she last invited me to anything without Michael insisting. Ask her what she really thinks of me when she's being honest instead of polite." The judge was quiet for a long moment. "I'm beginning to understand the situation better." "With all due respect, Judge, I don't think you do. Your daughter married my son and systematically separated him from his family, from his roots, from everything that made him who he was. She's turned him into someone I don't recognize, someone who's ashamed of where he came from. And you know what? Maybe that's what he wanted. Maybe he was always looking for an escape from his working-class background. But I'm done enabling it." "What would it take to repair this?" he asked. "Respect," I said simply. "Basic human respect. Not tolerance, not management, not scheduling me like an inconvenient appointment. Respect for who I am, what I've done, what I've sacrificed. But that's not going to happen, is it? Because in your world, Judge, people like me exist to serve people like you. We build your houses, fix your cars, maintain your offices, but we're not supposed to sit at your tables." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Tell me, Judge, would your daughter have married my son if he was still a construction worker like his father? If he hadn't gotten that Columbia degree, that corporate job, that six-figure salary? Would she have even looked twice at him?" His silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said. "Your daughter didn't marry my son. She married his potential, his trajectory away from people like me. And now that he's arrived in your world, there's no room for reminders of where he started. You're making assumptions. I'm stating observations based on 8 years of behavior. But here's the thing, Judge, I'm done trying to earn approval from people who've already decided I'm beneath them. I'm done paying for a life I'm not allowed to be part of. I'm done pretending that this is normal or acceptable or anything other than cruel." "So what happens now?" he asked. Now, you all have the Christmas you wanted. Refined, compatible, comfortable. No embarrassing construction workers to explain away. And I'll have Christmas with people who actually want me there, not just my money. The children barely know me thanks to your daughter. But if that ever changes, if they ever want to know their grandfather, the real one, not the sanitized version Isabella prefers, I'll be here. But I'm done chasing people who run from me." After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a while, processing the conversation. The judge had seemed genuinely surprised by some of what I'd said, which meant Isabella had been lying to everyone, creating a narrative where she was the reasonable one, and I was the difficult working-class relative who didn't understand boundaries. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Margaret Harrison, Isabella's mother. I've just had a disturbing conversation with my husband about the Christmas situation. I think we need to have a family meeting to discuss what's really going on." I didn't respond. There was nothing to discuss. The lines had been drawn, the choices made. They could have their family meeting without the embarrassing construction worker. Another text, this one from Michael. "Dad, Isabella's parents want to meet with everyone tomorrow. Will you come?" "No." I texted back. "Please, Dad. They're upset with Isabella. They had no idea what was really happening. Not my problem anymore. Dad, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. Yes, you should have, but you didn't. And now we all live with the consequences. I want to fix this. Start by figuring out who you are, Michael. Are you the man I raised, or are you the man Isabella created? Because you can't be both." No response came, and I turned off my phone. Tomorrow was Christmas, and I had a family dinner to attend with people who actually wanted me there. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white, covering all the rough edges and broken places, making everything look clean and new. But I knew better. Under that pristine surface the cracks remained. Some things once broken could never be fully repaired. Trust was one of them. Respect was another. And sometimes the most loving thing you could do was walk away and let people experience the weight of your absence. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of pristine silence that only fresh snow can bring. I woke early habit from years of job sites and made coffee in my small kitchen, while the rest of the world slept off their Christmas Eve celebrations. There were no stockings hung in my apartment, no tree blinking with lights, no excited grandchildren about to burst through the door. Just me, my coffee, and the weight of choices made. By 9, my phone had accumulated 17 missed calls and twice as many texts. I scrolled through them without reading, recognizing the numbers Michael, Isabella, both her parents, even some mutual friends who'd apparently been recruited to intervene. The last voicemail was from Margaret Harrison, Isabella's mother, and something in me couldn't resist listening. "Mr. Flores, this is Margaret Harrison. I've just had a very illuminating conversation with my husband about the real reason you won't be joining us today. I want you to know that we were completely misled about the situation. Isabella told us you preferred to celebrate separately, that you weren't comfortable in formal settings. We had no idea she'd actually... Well, I'm appalled, frankly. If you could find it in your heart to reconsider, you would be most welcome at our table. More than welcome desired. Please, Dennis, don't let my daughter's prejudices rob us all of family." I deleted it. Too little, too late. Where was this concern when Isabella was spending years slowly pushing me out of my son's life? Where was this outrage when I was being scheduled like a dental appointment, tolerated rather than welcomed? Rosa called at 10. "You coming early to help with the cooking? Do you even need to ask?" I said, already pulling on my clothes. "Good. Bring that cornbread stuffing you make, the one Linda used to do." "Already made it last night," I said, and it was true. Some traditions you keep even when the people you kept them for are gone. The drive to Rosa's was peaceful, the streets mostly empty, except for a few last-minute gift runners and people heading to family gatherings. I wondered if Michael was up yet, if he was helping Isabella prepare for her perfect dinner, if he was thinking about the Christmases we used to share when it was just us against the world. Rosa's house was already chaos when I arrived. Kids running everywhere, adults calling out from different rooms, music playing, food, cooking, the beautiful mess of a real family gathering. No one was concerned about compatibility or refinement. We were just family, complicated and loud and imperfect and present. "Tio Dennis," Maria's youngest, Sophia, crashed into my legs the moment I walked in. "Did you bring me a present?" "Sophia Manners," Maria called out, but she was smiling. I pulled out a small wrapped box from my jacket. "Maybe." "Think you've been good enough this year?" "I've been perfect," she announced with the confidence only a 6-year-old can muster. "Perfect, huh?" I handed her the box. "Then I guess this is yours." She tore into it with enthusiasm that would have horrified Isabella, no careful preservation of paper, no delicate untying of ribbons. Just pure joy at the simple wooden toy train I'd carved for her, painted bright red with yellow wheels. "You made this?" she asked, eyes wide. "Every piece," I said, "with these unrefined hands." Maria shot me a look that said she'd caught the reference, but Sophia just threw her arms around my neck. "It's the best present ever." And in that moment, being excluded from Michael's refined dinner seemed less like a loss and more like an escape. The kitchen was controlled chaos, with Rosa directing traffic like a general commanding troops. Dennis stuffing in the oven. Carlos stop eating the ham. Maria watched the rice. "Roberto, if you're not helping, you're in the way." I fell into the rhythm easily, the familiar dance of a family that had cooked together for decades. No one was worried about place settings or wine pairings. We were focused on food made with love, meant to be shared with people who actually wanted to be together. "So," Roberto said, sliding up beside me as I checked the stuffing, "I hear Michael married himself a real piece of work." "Roberto," I warned. "What I'm just saying, any woman who makes a man choose between her and his family ain't worth keeping. Remember when Carmen tried that with me?" "Carmen was different," I said. "She came around. Only because I told her straight my family was here before you and they'll be here after if you make me choose." Michael never learned that lesson. "I thought I taught him better," I admitted. "But maybe some lessons only stick when you want them to." My phone rang Michael again. This time Roberto grabbed it before I could decline the call. "Yeah," he answered. "No, this is his brother. He's busy. Busy having Christmas with people who actually appreciate him." "No, I don't think he wants to talk to you. Because you chose your snooty wife over your father, that's why." He paused, listening. "Oh, now you're sorry. Convenient." "Yeah, well, sorry doesn't undo 8 years of disrespect. He's right here living his life without you in it, which seems to be what you wanted anyway." I took the phone from him and hung up. "You didn't need to do that," I said. "Yeah, I did. Someone needs to tell that boy what everyone's thinking." Before I could respond, Rosa's landline rang. She answered with flour-covered hands, leaving white fingerprints on the receiver. "Flores residence." "No, this is Rosa. Judge Harrison." She looked at me with raised eyebrows. "Yes, he's here, but he's not available. I'm his sister." "You want a what?" "Hold on." She covered the phone. "Isabella's father wants to come here. Says he needs to apologize in person." "Absolutely not," I said immediately. "That's what I thought." She uncovered the phone. "Mr. Harrison, I appreciate the gesture, but this is our family Christmas, and frankly, your family has done enough damage. I don't care what Isabella told you. No, you listen to me. My brother funded your daughter's entire lifestyle while being told he wasn't good enough to eat at her table. That's not a misunderstanding, that's cruelty. You want to fix this? Start by teaching your daughter some basic human decency. Good day." She hung up with more force than necessary. "The nerve," she muttered. "Now they want to apologize. Where was this energy when Dennis was being pushed out of his son's life?" "Maybe they really didn't know," Maria suggested gently. "Bullshit," Rosa said firmly. "You don't not know someone's being excluded from family events. You choose not to see it because it's convenient." The truth of that sat heavy in the room until Carlos broke the tension. "Well, their loss is our gain. More Dennis for us. Plus his stuffing is better than anything they'll have at their fancy dinner," Roberto added. "Everything here is better." Sophia piped up chocolate already smeared on her Christmas dress. "Because everyone here wants to be here." Out of the mouths of babes. Dinner was at 3, the table extended with every leaf and still barely containing all the food. We went around saying what we were grateful for, a tradition Rosa insisted on, despite the groans from the teenagers. When it was my turn, I looked around the table at faces that reflected every shade of love and acceptance. I'm grateful for family that shows up. Not perfect family, not refined family, but real family. The kind that sees you for who you are and pulls up another chair instead of asking you to eat in the kitchen. That's specific, Carlos noted with a knowing look. Maybe a little, I admitted, and everyone laughed. Well, I'm grateful for Uncle Dennis, Maria said, raising her glass of wine, who taught me that working with your hands is noble, that sacrifice for family is love, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is stand up for yourself even when it hurts. Hear, hear, the table chorused, and I had to look away to maintain composure. We were halfway through dinner when the doorbell rang. Everyone looked at each other. We were all here. Rosa went to answer it and came back looking stunned. "Dennis?" she said carefully. "It's Michael. And the kids." I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. Just them. Just them. The table had gone silent, everyone waiting for my cue. I stood slowly, my legs feeling heavier than they had on any construction site. Michael stood in Rosa's foyer, melting snow on his expensive coat, holding Emma's hand while James clung to his leg. My grandchildren practically strangers to me now, dressed in their Christmas finest, but looking lost. "Dad," Michael said, and his voice broke on the word. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not moving closer. "Isabella's parents came to dinner. They were upset about the real reason you weren't there. There was an argument, a big one. Isabella said things about you, about our family, about where I came from, things I couldn't let stand anymore." "And where is Isabella now?" "At home with her parents, waiting for me to come to my senses," she said. He laughed bitterly. "I think I finally have. Emma, my granddaughter, who I'd last held when she was 3, looked up at me with eyes just like Michael's at that age. 'Grandpa, Mommy says we can't afford our school anymore because you're mean. Are you mean?' The innocence of the question broke something in me. I knelt down to her level, my knees protesting against Rosa's hardwood floor. "No, sweetheart, I'm not mean. I just decided that paying for things doesn't mean the same as being loved." "I love you," she said simply, as if it were obvious. "Even though I'm just a construction worker?" I asked, looking at Michael as I said it. "What's wrong with construction?" James piped up, finally releasing his father's leg. "You build things. That's cool. Mom says it's not a real job, but buildings are real, aren't they?" "Very real," I said. "I helped build your school, actually." "You did?" His eyes went wide. "The whole thing?" "Well, me and a lot of other workers. We all did our part. Mom said you just hammered nails," Emma said, then immediately looked guilty for repeating it. "Sometimes I do hammer nails," I said. "Also, measure boards, read blueprints, operate heavy machinery, calculate load-bearing weights, ensure safety standards, manage teams of workers." "That sounds hard," James interrupted, impressed. "It is, but it's honest work and I'm proud of it." Michael knelt beside me, tears now flowing freely down his face. "I'm sorry, Dad. God, I'm so sorry. I let her poison everything. I let her make me ashamed of the very things that should have made me proud. You worked your whole life to give me opportunities, and I used those opportunities to look down on you." "Yeah," I said simply. "You did. I don't know how to fix this." "Start by standing up," Rosa said from behind us. "This conversation doesn't happen on my foyer floor. Come in, sit down, eat something. The kids look hungry." "We can't intrude," Michael started. "You're not intruding," Rosa said firmly. "You're family. Complicated, messy, currently screwed up family, but family. Besides," Someone needs to teach these kids what a real Christmas dinner looks like." The kids were absorbed into the chaos immediately, Sophia appointing herself their guide to proper cousin behavior, which apparently involved sneaking cookies when the adults weren't looking. Michael sat beside me, looking uncomfortable, but more present than he'd been in years. "Tell me what happened," I said. He pushed food around his plate, gathering his thoughts. "Judge Harrison asked Isabella directly why you weren't there. She tried her usual deflection, but he pressed. Finally, she said that you weren't the kind of person they should associate with, that your presence would lower the tone of the gathering. She actually used the phrase, working-class contamination." Roberto choked on his beer. "She said what?" Her mother was horrified, started asking questions. "When was the last time the kids saw you? Why didn't we ever visit you? How much had you actually contributed to our lifestyle?" Isabella got defensive, started saying things about how she was protecting the children from negative influences from people who would hold them back. "Meaning me," I said. "Meaning you, meaning our entire family, meaning everything I came from." Michael's voice was thick with shame. "Her father asked her point blank if she was ashamed of my background. She said she was trying to help me evolve past it." "Evolve," Maria repeated with disgust. "Like being working class is some primitive state." "That's when I knew," Michael continued. "Hearing her say it so plainly, so coldly to her parents, I realized she'd never loved me. She loved the potential she saw in me, the man she could transform me into. And I let her. God help me, I let her erase everything you taught me and replace it with her version of success." "So, what now?" I asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "I left, took the kids and left. She's threatening divorce, custody battles, all of it. Says I'm throwing away our future for some working-class sentimentality." "Are you?" I asked, genuinely curious. He looked at me, then really looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my son instead of Isabella's husband. "No," he said firmly. "I'm trying to find my way back to who I really am, who you raised me to be. That's not a quick journey," I warned. "And I'm not just going to pretend the last 8 years didn't happen because you had a fight with your wife. I know. I don't expect. I know I have to earn your trust back, your respect. I know it won't be easy." "It won't be," I agreed. "But those two in there," I nodded toward the kitchen, where the kids' laughter mixed with Sophia's, "they didn't do anything wrong. They deserve a grandfather even if their father doesn't deserve instant forgiveness." "I understand," he said quietly. "Do you? Because this isn't a movie, Michael. There's no dramatic reconciliation where everything's suddenly fine. You let your wife systematically exclude me from your life. You took hundreds of thousands of dollars from me while allowing her to treat me like an embarrassment. You chose her prejudice over my love repeatedly for years. I know. I'm not finished. You made me feel worthless, Michael. Not because I am, but because you started seeing me through her eyes instead of your own. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your son be ashamed of you? To know that everything you did, every sacrifice you made resulted in creating someone who looks down on you?" He was crying again, but I didn't comfort him. He needed to feel this to understand the weight of what he'd done. "I saw the pictures," he said finally. "At your apartment. All the pictures of me, of us through the years. You kept them all, even after everything." "Of course I did. You're my son. That doesn't stop just because you forgot to be." Rosa appeared in the doorway. Not to interrupt this long overdue conversation, but the kids are asking if they can help make dessert. Apparently they've never actually cooked anything before. Isabella doesn't believe in children in the kitchen, Michael said, then caught himself. God, listen to me. Even now I'm explaining her rules like they matter. They don't, Rosa said firmly. Not in this house. In this house, kids make messes and learn things and exist without being managed. Dennis, why don't you teach them how to make those Christmas cookies Linda used to do, the ones with the thumbprint jam centers? Mom's cookies, Michael asked, his voice small. You remember them? I asked, surprised. Of course I remember. You made them every Christmas after she died, trying to get them just right. You never thought they were as good as hers, but they were. Different, maybe, but just as made with love. Isabella doesn't eat cookies, I noted. Too many carbs. Isabella doesn't do a lot of things that make life worth living, Michael said with sudden clarity. We spent the rest of the afternoon in Rosa's kitchen, 3 generations covered in flour and powered sugar-making cookies that would never appear in a lifestyle magazine but tasted like memory and possibility. James showed an aptitude for measuring precise and careful. Emma had an artistic eye for decoration, creating elaborate patterns with colored sugar. Grandpa, Emma asked as we waited for a batch to bake, why don't we see you more? Michael started to answer, but I held up a hand. This was between me and my granddaughter. Sometimes adults make complicated choices, I said carefully, and sometimes those choices keep families apart. That's dumb, James announced with 6-year-old certainty. Yes, I agreed. It is. Will we see you more now? Emma asked hopefully. I looked at Michael, who was watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. That depends on a lot of things, sweetheart. But I'd like to if you want. We want, both kids said in unison. As evening fell and the kids played with their cousins, Michael and I stepped onto Rosa's back porch. The snow had stopped, leaving the world crystallized and quiet. She's going to make this ugly, Michael said. The divorce, I mean. She's already texting threats about custody, about painting me as unstable for walking out on Christmas. You worried about losing the kids, terrified, about losing her? No. I think I lost myself when I married her, and I'm just now realizing it. The money's gone, you know, I said. The tuition, help, the mortgage assistance, all of it. That's not coming back just because you left her. I know. We'll figure it out. Maybe public school won't kill them. It didn't kill me. No, I agreed. It didn't. We stood in silence, watching our breath cloud in the cold air. Finally, Michael spoke again. Do you think Mom would be disappointed in me? I considered the question. I think she would have been sad to see you lose yourself. But she always believed in redemption, in the possibility of finding your way back. She would have been proud of you for finally standing up. Even if it took me too long. Especially then, the harder the right thing is to do, the more it matters when you finally do it. Michael's phone buzzed constantly. Isabella, her parents' mutual friends. He ignored them all until one made him pause. It's Judge Harrison, he said. He wants to know if the children are safe. Let me, I said, taking the phone. Judge, this is Dennis Flores. Yes, the children are with us. They're fine. No, I don't think Michael is being rash. I think he's finally being honest. With all due respect, Judge, your daughter revealed tonight who she really is, and what she really thinks of people like me. That's not something you come back from. Yes, I understand she's upset. No, I won't be encouraging him to return, because a man shouldn't stay with someone who's ashamed of his family. Yes, even if that family is working class? Especially then? The children will be fine. They're learning that there's more than one way to be a family. Goodbye, Judge. I handed the phone back to Michael. He seems to think Isabella was just stressed and said things she didn't mean. She meant them, Michael said with certainty. I've heard versions of them for years, just never so boldly stated. Little comments about not wanting the kids to pick up certain speech patterns, about making sure they understood the difference between our family and those people, about the importance of surrounding yourself with the right class of person. And you never pushed back. I told myself she didn't mean it the way it sounded, that she was just concerned about the kids' opportunities, that wanting better for them wasn't the same as being ashamed of where I came from. He laughed bitterly. I became an expert at lying to myself. We all do that sometimes, I said. The trick is recognizing when the lies have become more comfortable than the truth. Rosa appeared at the door. Kids are asking for their dad. Something about bedtime. Michael looked panicked. I didn't think this through. I can't take them back there tonight, not with Isabella in that state. But they need beds, routines. They can stay here, Rosa said immediately. All of you. The couch pulls out and the kids can share the guest room. Rosa, I couldn't. You could, and you will, she said firmly. Family doesn't let family go back to hostile situations. Besides, those kids need to know what a loving home feels like. Isabella's going to use this against me, Michael said. Say I'm keeping the kids from her. Let her, I said. You're protecting them from a toxic situation. Any decent judge would see that. You don't know Isabella's lawyers. No, but I know what's right. And sometimes that has to be enough. We went back inside where the kids were already yawning, the excitement of the day catching up with them. Emma curled into Michael's lap while James fought sleep with the determination of someone who didn't want to miss anything. Daddy, Emma said sleepily, this was the best Christmas ever. Better than the presents at home, Michael asked. There's no presents here for us, James pointed out, but it's still better. Why? Michael asked, though I think he knew the answer. Because everybody's happy, Emma said simply. Nobody's pretending. The truth from children hits different cuts cleaner. Michael held them tighter, and I saw him finally understand what he'd been denying them, not just a grandfather, but authenticity, warmth, the messy beauty of real family. As Rosa settled the kids into bed with borrowed pajamas and promises of pancakes in the morning, Michael and I cleaned the kitchen. It was familiar, this shared work, like when he was young and we'd tackle chores together. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, elbow deep in soapy water. How to be a single parent, how to fight Isabella's lawyers, how to afford life without her family's money. The same way I did, I said. One day at a time, one challenge at a time, with help from people who actually love you. Is that an offer? It's a statement of fact. You're not alone, Michael. You haven't been even when you chose to be. The difference is now, you're finally looking in the right direction for support. His phone rang Isabella again. This time he answered. Hello? No, they're safe. I'm not kidnapping them, Isabella. I'm their father. Because you revealed exactly what you think of my family. No, that's not being dramatic. That's responding to your words. Working class contamination. Isabella? You actually said that. I don't care if you were upset. No, we're not coming back tonight or tomorrow. We'll talk when you can speak about my father with respect. That might be never. Then I guess we're done talking. My lawyer will be in touch. And he hung up and immediately turned off his phone. My lawyer, he laughed shakily. I don't even have a lawyer. Roberto knows a good one, Rosa said, returning from tucking in the kids. Handled his divorce. Not fancy, but thorough. I can't afford. You can't afford not to, I interrupted. This is your kids we're talking about. I know, but without Isabella's money, you'll work, I said simply, like the rest of us, like I did raising you. It's not easy, but it's honest. I haven't done honest work in years, he admitted. Everything's been about appearances, about maintaining Isabella's standard of living. Then maybe it's time to remember what real work feels like, I suggested. What actually building something means instead of just managing other people's money. You offering me a job? He asked, half joking. I'm offering you a chance to remember who you are, I said seriously. The rest we figure out as we go. That night, I lay in my own bed back in my small apartment, thinking about the day. It wasn't the Christmas I'd planned. It was better and worse and more complicated than anything I could have imagined. Michael had finally stood up, but only after years of standing down. The kids were wonderful, but essentially strangers. The path forward was unclear, but at least it was a path, not the dead end I'd been facing just days ago. My phone had one last message from a number I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it. Then curiosity won. Mr. Flores, this is Margaret Harrison. I wanted you to know that I'm deeply ashamed of my daughter's behavior and attitudes. I was raised to believe that all honest work has dignity, and I failed to pass that on to Isabella. Your son and grandchildren are lucky to have you. I hope someday you can forgive us for our ignorance. I didn't respond. Forgiveness would come or it wouldn't, but it wasn't mine to offer on demand. It had to be earned, built like trust, one small gesture at a time. The city was quiet now, Christmas winding down into memory. Somewhere Isabella was probably raging to whoever would listen. Somewhere her parents were reconsidering who their daughter really was. Somewhere my grandchildren were sleeping in borrowed beds, finally safe from the poison of prejudice disguised as refinement. And somewhere between what was lost and what might be found, my son was remembering that he came from people who built things with their hands and hearts, who measured worth in love rather than income, who knew that the best families are the ones that pull up another chair rather than build higher walls. It wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't an ending at all. It was a rupture that might become a beginning, a break that might let light in a demolition, that might clear ground for something better. The morning after Christmas came harsh and bright sunlight bouncing off snow and straight through my bedroom window like an interrogation lamp. My phone showed 37 missed calls and twice as many texts. Isabella had been busy. The first voicemail I listened to was relatively calm, asking me to be reasonable and think about what's best for everyone. By the 10th, she was threatening legal action for alienating affection and manipulating Michael during an emotional crisis. By the last one, recorded at 3 a.m., she was crying and calling me a monster who'd destroyed her family. I deleted them all and made coffee. Michael called while I was still on my first cup. Dad, can you come to Rosa's? Isabella's here with her parents and 2 police officers. I was out the door before he finished the sentence, driving through empty morning streets with my heart hammering against my ribs. Not the kids. Please, not the kids. When I pulled up to Rosa's house, there were indeed 2 patrol cars in the driveway. Isabella stood on the front steps in what looked like yesterday's clothes, her usually perfect hair disheveled, gesturing wildly while Judge Harrison tried to calm her. Her mother stood apart, looking deeply uncomfortable. Rosa was in the doorway, arms crossed, immovable as a mountain. No warrant, no entry, she was saying as I approached. These officers are just here to check on the children's welfare, Judge Harrison said in his courtroom voice. Then they can see the children are fine through the window, Rosa shot back. This is my house and you're not coming in without proper legal authority. One of the officers, an older guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, noticed me approaching. Are you Mr. Flores? Dennis Flores, yes. Your daughter-in-law is concerned about her children's safety. They're with their father, I said simply. in a warm house with family being fed and cared for. What safety concern could there possibly be? Isabella whirled on me. You! This is all your fault. You poisoned him against me, turned him against our life. Isabella. Judge Harrison warned, but she was beyond stopping. 8 years. 8 years. I tried to make him better, to elevate him above his background, and you ruined it all, because your pride was hurt over one dinner. One dinner? I asked, keeping my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. Isabella, you've been systematically erasing me from my son's life since the day you met him. This isn't about one dinner. It's about 8 years of being told I'm not good enough. 8 years of watching my son be ashamed of where he came from. 8 years of financing a life I'm not welcome in. Drama and exaggeration, she spat. Just like Michael said you'd be. Michael said... I looked at her steadily. When did Michael say that? She faltered slightly. He's always apologizing for you, making excuses for your behavior, your inability to understand social boundaries. That's enough. Michael's voice cut through from behind Rosa. He stepped past my sister, the kids nowhere in sight, smart keeping them away from this circus. I never said those things, Isabella. You did, constantly, until I started believing them. Michael, darling, you're confused. Isabella shifted tactics, instantly reaching for him. Come home. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out, he said, stepping back from her reach. You showed me who you really are last night, who you've always been. I just finally stopped making excuses for it. Officers, Judge Harrison interrupted, could you please just confirm the children are safe so we can all move on? The older cop looked at Michael. Sir, are your children here? They are. Are they safe and cared for? They are. That's all we need to know, the officer said clearly, done with this family drama. Ma'am, he addressed Isabella, unless you have a custody order stating the children can't be with their father, there's nothing we can do here. But he took them, Isabella protested, on Christmas without telling me. From what I understand, he's their father, and you were having a domestic dispute, the younger officer said. He had every right to remove the children from a volatile situation. Volatile? Isabella's voice went up an octave. I'm volatile. I'm not the one destroying our family over some working-class pride issue. And there it is again, I said quietly. Working class. Like it's a disease. Like it's something shameful. Margaret Harrison finally spoke up. Isabella, perhaps we should go home and let everyone calm down. I'm not leaving without my children. They're my children too, Michael said firmly. And right now, they need to be away from this. From you. From the poison you've been feeding them about their own family. Poison I've been protecting them, ensuring they have the right influences, the right opportunities. The right prejudices, Michael corrected. Emma told me yesterday she thought Grandpa must be mean because that's what you said when you told her he couldn't afford their school anymore. James asked if building things was a pretend job because you said it wasn't real work. Those are your words, Isabella. Your poison. Isabella's face went pale, then flushed red. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth, stand up for my father. Remember where I came from. Where you came from. She laughed bitterly. You came from nothing. A cramped apartment, a dead mother, a father who thinks a successful day is not getting injured at work. I made you something. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the police officers looked uncomfortable. Judge Harrison closed his eyes as if in pain, and Margaret Harrison covered her mouth with her hand. Nothing, I repeated, tasting the word. My son came from nothing. I didn't mean... Isabella started. Yes, you did, Michael said quietly. You meant every word, and that's why we're done. He pulled out his phone, and I saw him activate the recording app. For the record, Isabella, I'm filing for divorce. The children will remain with me until we can establish a proper custody arrangement through the courts. Any attempt to take them without legal authority will be considered kidnapping. You can't do this, Isabella shrieked. I'll destroy you. My family has the best lawyers, and I have the truth, Michael said simply, including recordings of you discussing how you've been hiding assets from our joint accounts. Remember that conversation with your mother about the offshore accounts? The ones you thought I didn't know about? Isabella went very still. Judge Harrison's expression shifted from concerned to alarmed. Michael, the judge said carefully, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No more private discussions, Michael said. No more managing things quietly. No more pretending this is normal. Isabella has been emotionally abusing me and alienating me from my family for years. She's been teaching our children to be ashamed of their grandfather, of their heritage, of half of who they are. And I let it happen. That stops now. This is that man's influence, Isabella pointed at me. He's turned you against me, against our life. The life you built on his money, Michael asked. The house he helped pay for the wedding he funded. The children's education he subsidized, that life. Money he threw at us to make himself feel important. That did it. Rosa stepped forward 5 feet 2 inches of Puerto Rican fury. Listen here, you ungrateful little... Rosa, I said quietly, putting a hand on her shoulder. It's not worth it. The hell it's not. She shrugged me off. This woman takes and takes and takes, then acts like she's doing you a favor by accepting your help. Dennis worked himself to the bone for your family. He gave up his retirement, his savings, his dreams of traveling everything to make sure you had what you needed. And you call that trying to feel important. My financial arrangements with my family are none of your business, Isabella said coldly. Family? Rosa laughed. You don't know the meaning of the word. Family doesn't exclude. Family doesn't rank people by their job titles. Family doesn't teach children to be ashamed of where they come from. Officer, Judge Harrison said, I think we've established the children are safe. We should go. Not without my children. Isabella moved toward the door, but the younger police officer stepped in her path. Ma'am, you need to leave. Now. Unless you have a court order, you have no right to force entry or take the children against their father's wishes. This is kidnapping. This is parenting, the officer corrected. And if you continue to create a disturbance, we'll have to arrest you for disorderly conduct. Judge Harrison took his daughter's arm. Isabella, we're leaving. She jerked away from him. You're taking his side, a construction worker, over your own daughter. I'm taking the side of sense, her father said firmly. You've shown extremely poor judgment here. We're leaving before you make things worse. How can you... Because he's right, Margaret Harrison said quietly. Everything Dennis said is true. You have been cruel, Isabella. Systematically, deliberately cruel to a man whose only crime was working with his hands and loving his son. Isabella stared at her mother as if she'd been slapped. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. I'm ashamed of you. Ashamed of what you've become. Ashamed that I didn't see it sooner. You raised me to have standards, Isabella protested. I raised you to have class, her mother corrected. There's nothing classy about cruelty, nothing refined about snobbery, nothing elegant about ingratitude. She turned to me. Then this woman who'd eaten dinners I wasn't good enough to attend. Mr. Flores, I owe you an apology. Not just for my daughter's behavior, but for my blindness to it. You've shown more dignity and grace than any of us deserve. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Judge Harrison managed to get Isabella to their car, her protests echoing across the quiet morning street. The police officers followed them out, clearly relieved to be done with our domestic drama. Margaret Harrison lingered for a moment. "Michael," she said softly, "I know Isabella is my daughter, but if you need testimony for custody proceedings about what I've witnessed regarding her attitudes toward your family, I'll provide it." Michael looked stunned. "You'd testify against your own daughter." "I'd testify for those children," she corrected. "They deserve better than to grow up believing their grandfather is beneath them. They deserve to know where they come from, all of it without shame." She left then, and we stood in Rosa's doorway watching the cars disappear down the street. The neighbors were definitely going to have something to talk about at their New Year's parties. "Well," Rosa said finally, "that was more excitement than I usually have before noon. Who wants breakfast?" The kids were in the kitchen with Carlos blissfully unaware of the drama outside, building towers with pancakes. They looked up when we entered, sticky with syrup and happy. "Daddy?" Emma called out. "Uncle Carlos taught us to flip pancakes." "Mine landed on the floor," James admitted cheerfully. "But Carlos said that's how you learn." "That's right," Carlos agreed. "Nobody gets it perfect the first time, or the second, sometimes not even the 10th. Michael sat down between his children, pulling them close. "You guys okay?" "Why wouldn't we be?" James asked, genuinely puzzled. "No reason," Michael said, kissing the top of his head. "Just checking." I watched them, this fragment of my family finding its way back to itself, and felt something loosen in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness exactly that would take time, but it was possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom at work. "Heard there was some Christmas drama. You good?" "Getting there," I texted back. "Good. By the way, Johnson's looking for someone to lead the hospital expansion project. Big job, good money. Interested?" I looked at Michael, helping James clean syrup off his chin, at Emma, showing him her pancake tower, at Rosa, bustling around her kitchen like a general maintaining order. "Maybe," I texted. "Got some family stuff to sort out first." "Family first," Tom replied. "Job'll be there when you're ready." Family first. Such a simple concept, but one that had gotten so twisted in Michael's house, where family had become something to manage to rank, to exclude when inconvenient. "Dad?" Michael said quietly, moving to stand beside me while the kids attacked another round of pancakes. "I need to find a place. Can't stay at Rosa's forever, can't go back to the house." "What about the house?" I asked. "It's half yours." "It's all Isabella's, actually," he admitted. "Her parents bought it. My name's not even on the deed. I just paid for everything else, utilities, maintenance, improvements." "Jesus, Michael, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was embarrassed. Because I knew what you'd say. Because I wanted to pretend I was successful, that I was providing for my family, even when I was really just a tenant in my own life." The truth of it was pathetic and profound all at once. My son, with his Columbia degree and corporate job, didn't even own his own home. "There's a 2-bedroom in my building coming available," I said. "Nothing fancy, but it's clean, safe. Good school district. The kids' school. Is $20,000 a semester," I finished. "The public school 3 blocks from my building is rated excellent. They'll adjust. Isabella will fight that. She'll say I'm deliberately lowering their standard of living. Let her. Judge will look at the finances and see she's the one with family money, not you. Besides, Margaret Harrison seems ready to testify that Isabella's standards are toxic." Michael laughed shakily. "I can't believe her mother said that." "Parents can surprise you," I said. "Sometimes they see clearly when you think they're blind. Sometimes they're blind when you need them to see." "Which were you?" he asked. "Both," I admitted. "I saw Isabella for what she was, but stayed blind to how lost you were. I should have fought harder earlier." "I wouldn't have listened," he said honestly. "I was so determined to be something other than what I was, to evolve, as Isabella put it. I thought love meant changing for someone. She made me feel like who I was wasn't enough, and instead of running, I tried harder to become what she wanted. And now I realize that someone who loves you doesn't ask you to erase yourself. They don't make you choose between them and your family. They don't teach your children to be ashamed of their grandparents." Emma appeared at Michael's leg, tugging his shirt. "Daddy, can Grandpa teach me to build something?" "Like what, sweetheart?" "A jewelry box," she said firmly. "For Mom. Even if she's mean sometimes, she's still my mom." The pure innocence of it, the unconditional love even in the face of Isabella's poison, nearly broke me. I knelt down to Emma's level. "I can teach you," I said, "but it takes patience. You have to measure twice, cut once. You have to sand until your arms hurt. You have to be okay with making mistakes." "I'm okay with mistakes," she said seriously. "James makes them all the time." "Hey," James protested from the table. "We'll start small," I told her. "Maybe a little box for treasures, first practice for the bigger one." "Can we start today?" "Not today, but soon. I promise." She hugged me, then sticky hands and all, and I held her tight. This granddaughter I'd almost lost to class prejudice and calculated cruelty. The rest of the day passed in a blur of normalcy that felt anything but normal. Michael contacted a lawyer, Roberto's recommendation, who agreed to meet him the next day. The kids played with Sophia and the other cousins, absorbing the casual chaos of a real family gathering. I helped Rosa with house repairs she'd been putting off, teaching James to hold a level while I worked. "Is this what you do all day, Grandpa?" James asked, fascinated by the simple task of making sure a shelf was straight. "Part of it. I build things, fix things, make sure things are safe and strong." "That sounds important." "All work is important if it's honest," I said. "Remember that. Mom says some jobs matter more than others." "Your mom is wrong about that," I said carefully. "The person who builds the hospital matters just as much as the doctor who works in it. The person who grows the food matters just as much as the person who owns the restaurant. We all need each other." "That makes sense," he said, then added quietly, "Mom doesn't always make sense." "No," I agreed. "She doesn't." That evening, as Michael prepared to take the kids to a hotel, he insisted on not imposing on Rosa further. Isabella called. Michael put her on speaker at my insistence. If she was going to play games, we needed witnesses. "Michael, this is ridiculous. Come home. We can work this out." "There's nothing to work out, Isabella. You made your position clear. My family isn't good enough for you." I was stressed. "Your father has been manipulating you." "Stop," Michael said firmly. "Dad hasn't manipulated anything. He just finally stood up for himself. And I finally stood up for him, and for me, and for our children who deserve better than to be taught to look down on people. I never taught them. You told Emma that construction work isn't a real job. You told James that Grandpa couldn't come to Christmas because he wouldn't fit in. You've been teaching them your prejudices since they were born." I was protecting them. From what? From knowing their grandfather is a good man who works hard. From understanding that dignity doesn't come from a job title. From learning that family is about love, not social status. "You're throwing everything away," Isabella said, her voice shifting from anger to pleading. "Our life, our future, our position." "Your position," Michael corrected. "It was never ours. It was always yours, and I was just an accessory, something you were improving like a house you were flipping." "That's not true. I loved you." "You loved who you thought you could make me into," Michael said sadly. "But that person doesn't exist, Isabella. He never did. I'm Dennis Flores' son. I come from construction workers and immigrants, from people who built their lives with their hands, from family who measure worth in love and loyalty, not bank accounts and country club memberships." "You're making a mistake," she said coldly, the pleading tone evaporating. "You'll regret this. You'll end up just like your father, alone in some pathetic apartment, pretending your pride means more than success." I saw Michael flinch, but his voice stayed steady. "If I end up half the man my father is, I'll count myself lucky. He might live in a small apartment, but it's honest. He might work with his hands, but they're clean. He might not have your version of success, but he has something you'll never understand: integrity. Integrity doesn't pay for private school." "No. But apparently neither does marrying into money, since you've been taking my father's money for years while treating him like garbage. That money was a gift. That money was a sacrifice you never appreciated from a man you never respected. We're done, Isabella. I'll see you in court." He hung up and immediately blocked her number. Then he looked at me with eyes that held too much pain for someone his age. "I wasted so many years," he said. "Not wasted," I corrected. "You got Emma and James out of it. That's not waste, that's purpose. Now you know better, so you do better. That's all any of us can do." The kids came running in, ready to leave for the hotel. Emma was carrying a piece of paper which she handed to me shyly. "I drew this for you, Grandpa." It was a picture of two figures, one tall, one small, holding hands in front of something that might have been a house or might have been a spaceship. Kid drawings were wonderfully ambiguous. "That's you and me," she explained, "building something together." "It's perfect," I said, and meant it. "Can I keep it?" "It's for you," she said, like it was obvious. After they left for the hotel, with promises to meet the next day, to apartment hunt, Rosa and I sat in her living room, exhausted from the emotional marathon of the day. "You did good," she said, not taking him back, immediately making him understand the weight of what he did. "I wanted to," I admitted. "When I saw him with the kids, I wanted to pretend the last 8 years didn't happen. But they did happen. They did. And he needs to earn his way back, not for my pride, but for his own growth. If I just forgive and forget, he learns nothing. And if Isabella gets the kids, she won't," I said with more confidence than I felt. "Margaret Harrison will testify. Michael has evidence of hidden assets, and the kids are old enough to have their voices heard. You think they'd choose Michael? I think they'd choose love over luxury if given the chance. Kids are smart that way." My phone buzzed with another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then recognized the area code: Michael's office. "Dennis Flores." "Yes." "This is Harrison Clark from Michael's firm. I'm sorry to call so late, but I heard about the situation with Michael and Isabella." My stomach dropped. "If you're calling to fire him..." "Fire him?" "No, quite the opposite. I'm calling to offer support. Isabella has been making scenes at company events for years, treating support staff poorly, acting like she owned the place because Michael worked here. We've all been waiting for him to come to his senses." "Oh," I said, surprised. "Between you and me, Dennis. Can I call you Dennis? We've been concerned about Michael. His work is excellent, but he seemed increasingly unhappy, disconnected. Like he was playing a role instead of living his life." "That's pretty accurate," I said. Well, I want you to know that the firm stands behind him. If he needs time off for legal proceedings, he has it. If he needs an advance for legal fees, we'll arrange it. Michael's a good man who got caught up with the wrong woman. It happens to the best of us. I appreciate that, Mr. Clark. Harrison, please. And Dennis, I wanted to say something else. Michael talks about you sometimes when Isabella isn't around. About your work ethic, your integrity, the things you taught him. Everything good in that boy comes from you. Don't let anyone tell you different. After he hung up, I sat staring at the phone, processing this unexpected support from a world I'd assumed was closed to me. What? Rosa asked, seeing my expression. Michael's boss just called. They're supporting him. They've been waiting for him to leave Isabella. Rosa laughed. So everyone could see what she was except Michael. And me, I added. I saw it but didn't fight it hard enough. I let them drift away instead of fighting to stay close. You respected his choice even when it hurt. That's not weakness, Dennis, that's love. Fat lot of good it did. It did more good than you know. You showed him unconditional love. You were there when he needed you, even after he'd pushed you away. That's why he could come back. He knew you'd still be there. I almost wasn't, I admitted. If he hadn't stood up at Christmas, if he'd let Isabella keep excluding me, I was done. I was going to walk away completely. But you didn't have to. He chose right, finally. After how many years of choosing wrong? Doesn't matter, Rosa said firmly. What matters is he chose right, when it counted most. That night I couldn't sleep. I stood at my apartment window looking out at the city I'd helped build brick by brick, beam by beam. Somewhere out there, Michael was in a hotel with his kids, probably lying awake too, wondering how his carefully constructed life had collapsed so quickly. Somewhere else, Isabella was probably on the phone with lawyers, planning her attack. And somewhere else again, Margaret and Judge Harrison were perhaps reconsidering everything they thought they knew about their daughter. But here in my small apartment, with its photos and memories, its honest simplicity, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Not the desperate kind that ignores reality, but the solid kind built on truth. Finally spoken. Masks finally dropped, pretense finally abandoned. My phone lit up with a text from Michael. Kids asleep, thinking about everything. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave up on myself. I typed back, family doesn't give up. It just sometimes needs to step back until people remember what matters. I remember now, he replied. Clearly, painfully, but clearly. Good, I sent. Hold on to that clarity. You're going to need it. Because this wasn't over. Isabella would fight. She'd use every weapon in her arsenal, money, connections, manipulation. She'd try to paint Michael as unstable, me as a bad influence, herself as the victim. But she'd forgotten one thing: the truth has weight that money can't buy and connections can't override. And we had the truth. Finally, after years of pretending and accepting and accommodating, we had the truth. It might not be refined or elegant or compatible with Isabella's world, but it was ours, solid as the foundations I'd spent my life building. The next morning came with freezing rain that turned the city into a glass sculpture, beautiful and treacherous. I picked up Michael and the kids from the hotel at 8, navigating carefully through streets that sparkled with danger. Emma and James were quiet in the back seat, the reality of their changed situation perhaps beginning to settle in. "Are we going home today?" James asked as we pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building. "We're going to look at a new home," Michael said carefully, "near Grandpa." "What about our house?" Emma asked. "That's Mom's house," Michael explained. "We're going to find our own place." Will Mom come too? The question hung in the air like ice crystals. Michael turned to look at his children, and I saw him struggle with how much truth to share. Mom and I need some time apart, he said finally. But you'll still see her. She's still your mom. Is it because of Christmas? Emma asked, with that startling perception children sometimes have. Because she said mean things about Grandpa. Partly, Michael admitted, but it's more complicated than that. Everything's complicated with grown-ups, James muttered, and despite the circumstances, I had to suppress a smile. The apartment was on the 3rd floor. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom kitchen that opened to a living room. Maybe 800 square feet total. The walls needed paint, and the carpet had seen better days. But the bones were good, solid construction from the 50s when they built things to last. Michael stood in the middle of the empty living room, and I watched reality hit him. From 4,000 square feet in the suburbs to this, from marble countertops to worn formica, from his and hers walk-in closets to a single reach-in. It's small, Emma observed, but not unkindly. It's cozy, I corrected. And look, I walked to the window. You can see the park from here. And the school is right there, see the playground. James pressed his nose against the glass. That's a big playground. Will all our stuff fit? Emma asked. Michael laughed, but it was bitter around the edges. Most of our stuff belongs to Mom. We'll get new things. Our things. Can I pick my bed? James asked. We'll pick them together, Michael promised. The landlord, Jerry, who I'd known for 15 years, gave us some space to discuss. Michael walked through the rooms again, measuring with his eyes, calculating what his new life would look like. The school's really good, he asked. Rosa's 3 kids went there. All of them went to college. Maria's at Cornell now. Cornell, he repeated, from public school. Imagine that, I said dryly. My phone rang. Isabella's lawyer. I put it on speaker so Michael could hear. Mr. Flores, this is David Hartman from Hartman, Klein and Associates. I'm representing Isabella Flores in the divorce proceedings. She's quick, I muttered. I'm calling to inform you that any financial support you've been providing to the family needs to continue through the proper channels. Any attempt to economically abandon the children will be viewed unfavorably by the court. Economically abandon? I laughed. Mr. Hartman, I've poured over $200,000 into that family over the past 8 years. Money that went to support a lifestyle that had no room for me in it. That ends now. The children's education is their parents' responsibility. I'm a grandfather, not a bank. If Isabella wants to maintain their current school, she can use some of that family money she's so proud of. Mr. Flores, I'd advise you to reconsider. And I'd advise you to check your facts before making threats, I interrupted. I have years of bank records showing my support. I have text messages from Isabella calling me an embarrassment, saying I'm not refined enough for her family. I have witnesses to her saying my son came from nothing. You want to make this about money? Let's make it about money. Let's talk about how much I gave versus how much respect I got in return. This hostility won't help anyone. This isn't hostility, counselor. This is clarity. Isabella made her position clear. I'm not good enough for her world. Fine. Then my money isn't good enough either. Simple as that. You're punishing innocent children. I'm refusing to enable their mother's prejudice. There's a difference. The children are welcome in my life any time. My money, however, is no longer available to people who see me as beneath them. I hung up before he could respond. Michael was staring at me with something like awe. I've never heard you talk to anyone like that. I've never had to, I said. I spent my whole life avoiding conflict, thinking that made me the bigger person. Turns out it just made me an easier target. Jerry knocked and entered. So, what do we think? Michael looked around once more, then at his kids who were exploring the bedrooms, their voices echoing in the empty spaces. We'll take it, he said. When can we move in? Soon as you sign the lease and pay first, last, and security. Michael's face fell. I need to access some funds first. Most of my money is in joint accounts that Isabella's probably already frozen. I pulled out my checkbook. I've got it. Dad, no. You've already given too much. This isn't giving, I said, writing the check. This is investing. In your independence, in your fresh start, in my grandchildren having a father who's learning to stand on his own feet. There's a difference. Jerry took the check, handed Michael the keys. Utilities are included. Building's got good bones. Your father actually worked on the renovation about 10 years back. He does solid work. After Jerry left, we stood in the empty apartment that would become Michael's new home. The kids ran from room to room, their footsteps echoing, already claiming spaces. I call this room, James shouted. No fair, I want that one, Emma countered. You'll share, Michael said. We'll get bunk beds. Bunk beds? James's eyes went wide. Really? Really? Mom would never let us have bunk beds, Emma said. She said they were dangerous. Life's dangerous, I said. Might as well have some fun with it. Michael's phone rang. His lawyer. Michael, just got off the phone with Isabella's team. They're playing hardball, claiming abandonment, demanding full custody, asking for serious alimony and child support. On what grounds? They're saying you're having a mental breakdown, that you've been unduly influenced by your father, that you're deliberately downgrading the children's lifestyle out of spite. That's ridiculous. Of course it is. But they're also claiming you've been hiding assets, that your father's financial support was actually payments to you that you concealed from marital assets. Michael looked at me, panicked. I took the phone. This is Dennis Flores. Those payments were gifts to my family, documented as such on tax returns. I have receipts for everything: tuition payments made directly to schools, mortgage assistance paid to the bank, the down payment for their house. Everything traceable, everything legal. Good, that's good. Can you get me those records? You'll have them by tomorrow. Excellent. And Michael, don't worry. Isabella's lawyer is known for aggressive opening positions. It's intimidation tactics. We have strong counters, especially with what you've told me about her hiding assets offshore. After the call, Michael slumped against the wall. She's really going to war. Did you expect anything less? I asked. Isabella doesn't like losing control. You've taken away her project, turning you into someone you're not. Of course she's furious. Emma appeared in the doorway. Daddy, are you sad? A little, he admitted. Is it because of Mom? Yeah, sweetheart. She walked over and took his hand. It's okay to be sad. Grandpa, do you have any boxes? We need to start packing our real stuff. Our real stuff, I asked. The stuff that's really ours, not the fancy stuff Mom bought to impress people. Our real things, like my drawings and James's rock collection and Daddy's old baseball glove. How do you know about my baseball glove? Michael asked, surprised. I found it in the garage once. Mom said to throw it away because it was ratty, but I hid it instead. It seemed important. Michael pulled his daughter close, and I saw him fighting tears. It is important. It was Grandpa's before it was mine. Really? Emma looked at me with new interest. You played baseball. Every Sunday in the summer, I said. Your dad was my star player. Mom said sports were a waste of time unless you could get a scholarship, James said, joining us. Your mom says a lot of things, Michael said carefully. But she's not always right. She's wrong a lot, James observed. Like when she said Grandpa wasn't sophisticated. He knows lots of stuff. Like what? I asked, amused. Like how to make things level and how to tell if wood is good and how to make pancakes that actually taste good, not like the healthy ones Mom makes that taste like cardboard. Those are protein pancakes, Emma said, then made a face. They're terrible. Everything at that house is terrible, James declared. It's all for show. James, Michael warned. It's true. Remember when Mom made us eat that gross caviar at her party? And we had to pretend we liked it, and she got mad when I spit it in my napkin. You spit it out, Emma gasped, delighted. It tasted like fish gone bad. Because it basically is, I said, and all three of them looked at me. Caviar is fish eggs. Expensive fish eggs, but still fish eggs. People pay hundreds of dollars to eat fish eggs, James asked, incredulous. Thousands sometimes. That's stupid, he declared with the confidence of youth. That's sophisticated, Michael corrected with heavy irony. We spent the rest of the morning making lists, what they needed immediately, what could wait, what was worth fighting for in the divorce. It was a depressingly short list when you removed everything Isabella considered hers. The photo albums, Michael said suddenly. I want the photo albums from before we met. She probably doesn't even know where they are. Where are they? Basement storage. Along with Mom's things, the things you gave me after she died. Isabella wanted to throw them out, said they were depressing. Your mother's things are not depressing, I said firmly. Their memory, their history, their love made tangible. I know. That's why I hid them in the basement. You've been hiding a lot of things, I observed. I've been hiding everything real, he admitted. For 8 years I've been hiding everything that mattered, trying to become someone who didn't need to hide. My phone rang. Rosa. Dennis, you need to see the news. What now? Isabella's father. He's given an interview to Channel 7 about the divorce. It's not what you'd expect. I turned on the TV in Jerry's office, flipping to Channel 7. Judge Harrison was on screen, looking every inch the distinguished jurist, but his words were not what Isabella would want to hear. While I love my daughter, I cannot condone her behavior toward her husband's family. Working with one's hands is noble labor. The prejudice against blue-collar workers, the assumption that manual labor is somehow less valuable than office work. These are attitudes that divide our society. I'm ashamed that my daughter has contributed to that division. The reporter looked stunned. So you're supporting your son-in-law in the divorce? I'm supporting what's right, the judge said carefully. And what's right is that children know and respect all parts of their heritage, not just the parts that photograph well at country clubs. Michael stared at the screen. Her own father? He's a judge, I said. He deals in truth professionally. Maybe he's tired of pretending personally. The interview continued with the judge discussing the value of honest work, the importance of family bonds, the danger of teaching children to value status over substance. It was a complete repudiation of everything Isabella stood for, delivered by her own father on public television. Michael's phone exploded with calls and texts. Isabella screaming in one voicemail about betrayal and humiliation. Friends expressing shock and support in equal measure. His boss offering any help needed. She's going to go nuclear now, Michael said quietly. Let her, I said. Nuclear wars have fallout for everyone involved. She's the one with more to lose. That afternoon we went shopping for the basics: beds, a couch, kitchen essentials. Nothing fancy, everything functional. The kids were fascinated by the process of choosing something they'd never been allowed to do before. "Can we get this one?" Emma asked, pointing at a simple wooden table. "Why that one?" Michael asked. "Because it looks strong, like Grandpa would build." "Then that's the one we get." James chose a bright blue rug for their room. "Mom would hate it," he said cheerfully. "It doesn't match anything." "Perfect," Michael said, and I could see him slowly shedding Isabella's rules, her restrictions, her rigid control over every aesthetic choice. At the checkout, the total came to less than Isabella spent on a single shopping trip. Michael paid with his personal credit card, one of the few things Isabella couldn't touch. "This is weird," he said, as we loaded the truck I'd borrowed from work. "Buying my own furniture, choosing my own things. Isabella always handled all of that." "Controlled all of that," I corrected. "Yeah. She'd spend weeks researching the perfect piece, consulting decorators, making sure everything fit her vision. And now I just want a place to sit, and a bed to sleep in, and a table where my kids can do homework without worrying about scratching it." "Sounds like home," I said. "Yeah," he agreed, something like wonder in his voice. "It does." As we unloaded at the new apartment, neighbors appeared curious, helpful, normal people living normal lives. Mrs. Chen from across the hall offered dishes and pots. "Divorce?" she asked knowingly, and when Michael nodded, she patted his arm. "It gets better. First year is hard, then you remember who you are." The young couple from downstairs helped carry the couch up. "Kids'll love the park," the husband said. "Our boys practically live there in summer." "Your boys?" Emma perked up. 7 and 9, the wife said. "They'll be thrilled to have new friends." By evening, the apartment had transformed from empty space to something approaching livable. The kids were on their new bunk beds, giggling about something. Michael was attempting to cook dinner on the stove that had seen better days, but still worked fine. "I don't actually know how to cook," he admitted. "Isabella always, or we got takeout, or the housekeeper." "You had a housekeeper?" I asked. "Twice a week. Isabella insisted, said it was beneath her to clean." "Jesus, Michael. I know. Looking back, I don't know how I justified any of it. The waste, the pretension, the complete disconnection from reality." "You were in love," I said. "I was in something," he corrected. "But I don't think it was love. Love doesn't make you smaller. Isabella made me smaller every day until I almost disappeared completely." "But you didn't," I pointed out. "You're here, cooking badly, but cooking, in your own place, making your own choices." "Burning dinner is my own choice?" "It's a start." We salvaged dinner barely, and ate at the wooden table Emma had chosen on mismatched plates from Mrs. Chen, laughing when James spilled juice on his new blue rug and didn't have to panic about it. "This is nice," Emma said suddenly. "Like really nice. Nobody's worried about using the wrong fork or sitting up straight enough or talking about appropriate topics." "What were appropriate topics?" I asked. "School achievements, extracurricular excellence, and future career planning," she recited. "Mother had a list." "She had a list?" Michael asked, appalled. "In her office. Topics for family dinner conversation. She gave us gold stars if we contributed appropriately." "Gold stars?" "She gave our children gold stars for dinner conversation." "I never got gold stars," James said cheerfully. "I always wanted to talk about bugs or ninjas or whether hot dogs were sandwiches." "Are hot dogs sandwiches?" I asked, genuinely curious about his opinion. No way, they're their own thing. But structurally, Emma began, and they were off debating with passion and illogic and joy, the kind of conversation that would have been shut down at Isabella's table, but flourished here in this small apartment with its mismatched everything and its perfect imperfection. After the kids were asleep, Michael and I stood on the small balcony looking out at the city lights. Someone was playing music nearby, something Latin and lively. Mrs. Rodriguez, I identified. Every Friday night. Her grandson comes over and they dance. Isabella would have complained to the landlord. And missed the joy, I said. That's Isabella's problem. She's so busy managing life she forgets to live it. Michael's phone buzzed. Another text from Isabella. You're destroying our children's futures for your working-class pride. He showed it to me, then did something I didn't expect. He laughed. Really laughed for the first time in days. Working-class pride, he repeated, like it's something shameful. But you know what? Maybe that's exactly what this is. Maybe I'm finally remembering that there's pride in work, in building something with your own hands, in knowing that every dollar you have you earned. Took you long enough? I said, but gently. I'm a slow learner, but I'm learning. He looked at the apartment building, lit windows, showing glimpses of other lives, other struggles, other joys. This is real, isn't it? This is what life actually looks like for most people. This is what honest life looks like, I corrected. Isabella's life is real too. It's just built on different foundations. Problem is she wanted to build on those foundations using my materials, while pretending the materials were beneath her. She's going to try to take the kids. She's going to try a lot of things, but she showed her true colors in front of her own parents. That's hard to walk back in court. I can't believe her father gave that interview. Man has his own reputation to think about, being associated with that level of snobbery and prejudice. That's not a good look for a judge who's supposed to be impartial. So he threw his own daughter under the bus. He told the truth. If that throws her under the bus, she's the one who parked there. Another text from Isabella. The children need stability. Come home. We can work this out. Michael deleted it without responding. You're getting stronger, I observed. I'm getting free, he corrected. Every ignored text, every declined call, every moment. I don't apologize for who I am or where I came from. I'm getting free. Freedom's expensive sometimes. Not as expensive as staying trapped. We went back inside where the apartment was quiet, except for the soft breathing from the kids' room. Michael walked through the space, touching things, the table Emma chose, the couch we'd assembled together, the kitchen where he'd burned dinner, but made it with his own hands. Mom would have liked this, he said suddenly, the simplicity of it, the honesty. She always said happiness wasn't about what you had, but who you had it with. Linda was a wise woman. I forgot her wisdom. Let Isabella's philosophy drown it out. Mom would have seen right through her. Probably. But she would have let you make your own mistakes. Even this big, especially this big, the bigger the mistake, the bigger the lesson. Michael's lawyer called. Good news and bad news. Isabella's team is backing off the mental breakdown angle. The judge's interview killed that strategy. But they're doubling down on lifestyle maintenance for the kids. They want to depose you about every dollar you've contributed over the years. Let them, I said, taking the phone. I've got 8 years of records. Every check, every transfer, every penny. All going to support a family that excluded me from their table. You want to make this about money? I'll make it about dignity. Can you come in tomorrow? Bring everything. I'll be there. After the call, Michael looked worried. This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly. Now it's going to get honest. There's a difference. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed and gleaming. Somewhere across town, Isabella was probably strategizing with her lawyers, planning her next attack. But here in this small apartment with its donated dishes and assembled furniture, something real was taking root. "Dad," Michael said as I prepared to leave, "thank you for not giving up on me, for being here now, for showing me what I'd lost." "You didn't lose it," I said. "You just misplaced it for a while, but working-class pride, real family, values the understanding that dignity comes from character, not career, that's in your DNA. Isabella could cover it up, but she couldn't erase it." "It almost got erased." "Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades," I said, using one of Linda's favorite expressions. Michael smiled. "Mom used to say that. She said a lot of things worth remembering. Maybe now you'll have the quiet to hear them again." I left him standing in his new apartment, his new life, his new chance at being the man he was raised to be instead of the man Isabella tried to manufacture. It wasn't going to be easy. Isabella would fight with every weapon in her considerable arsenal. But Michael had something she didn't, the knowledge of who he really was, stripped of pretense and prejudice. And he had family. Real family. The kind that shows up not because of your zip code or tax bracket, but because love doesn't check credit scores or judge calloused hands. The kind that builds foundations strong enough to weather any storm, even the hurricane Isabella was about to unleash. Driving home, I passed the construction site where I'd spent so many years, where Michael used to visit me as a boy, hard hat, too big for his small head, eyes wide with wonder at the rising structures. That boy was still in there under the Columbia degree and corporate polish. Isabella had tried to bury him. But boys who grow up on construction sites know something about foundations. The deeper you dig, the stronger they prove to be.